Well, what a wonderful format we have today. I know we've had some, I'm sure we've got some representative senators that are very grateful to have our legislative session over. I know this GAC group did a good job keeping you posted along the way, and certainly anxious to hear from some of you on bills that you may have been tracking, sort of where your industry landed on stuff. We do typically talk about the legislative session, of course, through the business lens. So lots of other policies out there, I'm sure, to grimace about or celebrate, but we'll keep our business lens on for the most part. But really, really excited. We've missed Senator Chris Gildon and our representatives in the 25th and 31st Legislative District, but we are so grateful that although I'm sure they just want to be partying, having fun, relaxing, they are giving their time today. And when I say they, we have recently elected leader of the Washington State House Representatives, Representative Drew Stokesbary, that'll be on the call today. And we want to congratulate him for that appointment. And then, of course, our beloved Deputy Leader of the Washington State Senate Republicans, Senator Chris Gildon, is here as well. And again, I'm just so grateful that you have both taken the time when I'm sure, like I said, all you want to do is crawl in bed or do whatever you do to find comfort and peace and solace. I'm so grateful that you're here today to give us, I guess, just an overview of how the legislative session went, wins, losses, what do we need to work on, all of that. And I kept it a pretty informal agenda today, so you both can speak as much as you like and we can ask questions, and as informal or as informal as you like. But again, we're just grateful you're here. So I do see that we've got both of you. I see Senator Gildon's face, so we will start with you and welcome. And hello, Representative Jacobson. I'm glad you could be here as well.
Well, good morning, everybody, and glad to be back in action on this side of the of Olympia. It's much better than 105 days. It was a long session. It was our first long session since 2019, actually, that was in person. So there was a lot of readjusting because we were coming out of COVID and all of the procedures and committee schedules and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, this was our big long session, 105 days. Next year, the session will be the short one where we're going to come back and fix everything that we messed up this year, hopefully. And that is just 60 days. But in total, the legislature, there were 1,666 bills introduced this year in the House and the Senate. And of those, 476 passed both chambers and have been delivered to the governor. And I think since we've got, how much time do we have, Tara?
Well, we have an hour with you, and you are more than welcome to take as much of that as not, or we've got our other city officials that can chime in as to fill the gaps.
All right, so I'm just going to hit the high points, and then I'll let Rep. Stokesbary maybe dig in a little bit deeper and give some more details, because we didn't divide out any of our tasks today. But
That's
I'll
okay.
hit kind of some big buckets are some of our priorities: public safety, affordability, and then obviously education is always a priority. So public safety, I know you've heard so much about what's been going on with vehicular pursuit, with the drug law. And then I'll just kind of, I guess, give away the end line is we made a little bit of progress with vehicular pursuit this year. We expanded the ability to pursue to violent crimes, some violent crimes, some domestic violence, and DUI. They still do not have the ability to pursue for vehicular theft, or in the case of things like reckless driving, that kind of stuff. So I think that's going to be something that we're going to have to revisit later. And then I'll just leave the Blake bill wide open for Drew to talk about for drugs on that end. And he can tell, that was one of the most spectacular things that I've ever seen in politics since I've been in. A couple of other good things on public safety is we do have funding for the Auto Theft Prevention Task Force. That's a good thing. There is funding to provide more law enforcement training courses throughout the year so we can increase throughput. That's a good thing. And then affordability, I think we may have different versions slightly of the budget based off of our experience going through the budget. For me, this was my first time being on the budget writing team for the operating budget. And if you don't know how that works, is basically there's in the Senate, it's a little different than it was in the House, but we had the chair and the vice chair on the Democrat side, and then on the Republican side, the ranking member and the assistant ranking. And those four people get into a room and they go through all of the lines of the budget, all $69.8 billion. They go through every line in the evening and figure out, what we're going to fund, what we're not going to fund, all of that kind of stuff. And we all get to put in priorities from our caucus, from our different committee ranking members and stuff like that. Anyway, so this was my first year being on that budget writing team, and it was a big experience. But in the end, the budget that we passed out doesn't have any new taxes. So that's a pretty good thing. The rate of growth is about half of what it's been in previous years. It's just about a little over 8%. And it leaves not as big of a reserve as I would like, but it does leave a sizable reserve of about $3.4 billion for emergency purposes. A couple of the things that did not pass through the legislature this year were two proposals to increase property taxes, the cost of property. One of them was increasing the real estate excise tax, and the other one would just increase the property tax rate. Neither of those went through this year, but they're still on the table for next year. And then education, we had a record year, I think, for education. Increased funding. There's going to be raises for teachers. There's going to be money going to special ed, which we need. And there's going to be about $400 million that's going to our schools to help with construction and maintenance of our schools, that kind of stuff. We did have some missed opportunities. We had another $70 million on the table that would have addressed learning loss that our children have experienced during online time to help get them back up to speed. We did lose that funding in the final version of the budget. So it's not all roses and stuff like that. But I think all in all, I think in the Senate, the budget, which is the biggest bill this year, because it covers our operating costs for the next 2 years, it passed in a fairly bipartisan way out of the Senate, although not everyone loved every part of it. The House, they had a different experience and they got a different result because of that. And just in the interest of time, I'll turn it over to Rep. Stokesbary. Congratulations on your election, by the way, as leader for the House Republicans. And take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks, Tara, for having us. Good to see everybody. Chris covered things pretty well. So I spent most of last week meeting with editorial boards, kind of recapping session, because I'm now the leader of our caucus, and that's a weird experience to go through session devoted to one narrow aspect of the legislature, which is the state budget. I've been the ranking member on the House Appropriations Committee, and then all of a sudden I have to speak for the caucus on all bills. Not all of which I must admit to you guys, since you're friends, I have been paying as close of attention to as I probably should have if I knew I was going to be put into this position. But anyway, so I'll kind of look through my notes, try to hit the couple things that maybe Chris left, including what he said is the most interesting thing of session, maybe not in a good way, is the fallout of this Blake decision. I think so Chris mentioned it was the first in-person long session since 2019. I think that was good. I think we discovered through the pandemic that there are some things that you can do remotely, maybe some things that you can even do a little better. I don't think politics is one of them. to talk about really complicated issues where people have deeply held opinions that are in conflict with each other. You need more personal connection, not less. So I think legislating remotely was pretty bad for the state for a couple of years. And I think when we got back together, while it was certainly not a great session from my perspective, probably not from Chris or Cindy's perspective, it was not nearly as bad as the remote sessions. And I think our ability to talk directly to colleagues we disagree with, stakeholders we disagree with, find areas where we do disagree, understand what the disagreements are, I think really went a long way. And so there were a lot of bipartisan successes. The capital and transportation budgets were among them. And I guess this is probably a good point and I'm sure I'm going to skip some, so maybe Chris can fill in if I skip any, but we had a ton of big wins for Sumner, Puyallup in those budgets. $2 million for Pierce County Library to help with the Sumner bond campaign. I think that whole project is like 15 million or something. So 2 million out of 15 that they won't have to go out and bond is a pretty big deal. That'll help taxpayers. Also a little bit of money for the Bonnie Lake Library. I know Bonnie Lake is slightly outside of the Sumner Puyallup area, but I was able to get something like $700,000 for the Bonnie Lake Food Bank to potentially deal with some relocation costs so they can continue seamlessly delivering services to the community. Lots of things in the transportation budget. One of the biggest things in the entire budget for the whole state was accelerating the Highway 410, 512, 167 interchange. I think that was not scheduled to go on to start being built until maybe 4 or 6 years from now. And I think they were able to move some money around to get that on track to start within 2 years. So that's a pretty big deal for our area. I know there is a bunch of work kind of along some of the roads leading in and out of 410, along 162, a roundabout to relieve congestion, some thoroughfares to relieve some of that pressure that is going to be building up onto Holly. So a lot of capital and transportation wins for our area, for East Pierce County. So that was exciting. And so anyway, back to bipartisan successes. As Chris mentioned, another bipartisan success was the Senate budget, but not the House budget. And I'll get to that in a second. There's also a lot of bipartisan agreement on some ag and natural resources issues, which is unusual. Kelly Chambers had a bill that dealt with some voluntary stewardship stuff. That general approach was the foundation for a really groundbreaking agreement between nearly every one of Washington's federally recognized treaty tribes and pretty much every major ag group of note, including the Farm Bureau, Dairy Federation, what have you. You know, anybody who has background in these water issues knows that tribes and farmers have not really agreed on what to do with water or how to allocate water for generations. Both these sides came to the legislature and asked us to pass a riparian buffer grant program that they both agreed on, that they both felt like would make lives better for farmers and better for fish and people who catch the fish. And while that bill didn't pass, it was part of the capital budget. And again, I mean, huge bipartisan success that anybody who observed Olympia 10 years ago would have never thought could happen. Also, a bunch of bipartisan agreement on some housing stuff. A little bit of that kind of fell apart at the end, but probably the biggest bill that passed is a middle housing bill that I think will apply certainly to Puyallup, and I think it applies in a modified form to Sumner as well. Essentially would require the city to allow duplexes. Certainly a lot of strong opinions on both sides and a real tension between the desire for local control and a desire to build more units to relieve our affordable housing crisis. I think the version that finally passed is probably the best compromise that I've seen in 3 or 4 years of this topic being talked about. I am cautiously optimistic it will do some good in terms of relieving our affordable housing crisis, but also will sort of be delivered in a way that cities like Puyallup and Sumner, which are certainly not the same thing as Seattle or Bellevue, can work with and implement and still keep all of the good things about our communities intact that we like. but while there was a few bipartisan successes, I think there's a lot of things that I think were some missed opportunities, to use Chris's words. He mentioned there was a update to the police pursuit bill. I don't think it went nearly as far enough as it should, even though I voted for it. But I viewed it as we need to move the ball 50 or 100 yards, and this bill will move it 2 or 3 yards, and that's better than nothing at all. There was no bipartisan collaboration on the House operating budget, and I think that was a real missed opportunity. It's something that can easily be done. You saw it happen in the capital and transportation budgets, like Chris described, it happened on the Senate operating budget. But when the House was developing its operating budget, that didn't happen at all, and I think that was a real missed opportunity. And then when the two bodies met together for the final conference budget that passes both chambers, they did that just with the majority caucuses, not with either the House minority or the Senate minority. So I think that was unfortunate. While Chris noted that there was no new tax increases, and boy, we came close to having a couple of real big ones. There also was no tax cuts, and I think that was a big missed opportunity. Nearly every state in the country has delivered some broad-based tax relief in the last 2 or 3 years. New York, Illinois, California. While we were in session, the Massachusetts legislature passed a multi-$100 million tax cut. But for some reason, Washington is alone, even among quote unquote blue states, in not wanting to deliver any tax relief. And then I think the only other big thing that I've been skipping over is this Blake bill. And part of that is because it involves a complicated backstory. Part of that is because the outcome is uncertain. So, excuse me, getting over a little cold, which was inconveniently timed. If you all haven't heard, about 2 or 3 years ago, the state Supreme Court issued a decision called Blake, and the case was Blake v. State. So when we say Blake, we're just referring to the name of the case, that essentially made all drugs legal. The state law criminalized, it made a felony the possession of illegal substances. The Supreme Court said that because you could possess something without knowing it, for example, if you just bought a pair of pants at Value Village and didn't check the pockets, and it turns out the pants had drugs in it, you would be possessing those drugs without knowing it. To me, it sort of sounded like the excuses I made up when I was 16 to try to get out of being in trouble. But the Supreme Court bought it hook, line, and sinker, said that because we did not require drug possession to be done knowingly in order to make it a felony, it was unconstitutional. So later that year, the legislature passed a temporary quote unquote fix that basically made possession, I forget if it was a misdemeanor or gross misdemeanor, but sunsetted that law, and that law will now expire on June 30th of this year if nothing else happens. So if we get to that point, then once again, sort of all drugs will be legal as a matter of state law. I think there's been a lot of bipartisan consensus in the legislature that it's not quite so simple as just slapping the word knowingly into the statute and re-felonizing it and doing nothing more. I think people kind of recognize the 1980s era war on drugs didn't actually solve any of the problem. I think there's a bunch of emerging medical understanding of how substance use disorder works, and that this needs to be treated a lot more like we treat other diseases rather than only a law and order type issue. And so the conversation about what to do has involved how do you simultaneously, penalize illegal behavior, but also provide meaningful opportunities for people suffering from addiction to be able to get treatment and get better. So rather than, going in and out of jail for the rest of their lives, they go in and out of treatment, hopefully just once, and then can become productive members of society after that. But obviously the devil is in the details. And so we've spent a year or two trying to sort out those details. The Senate passed a bill that would have, I think, struck a pretty good balance. And if you look at the vote on that bill, it suggests that they did a good job. A healthy mix of both Democrats and Republicans voted for that bill. Some Democrats voted no, thinking that, this makes drugs subject to too many criminal penalties. Some Republicans voted no, thinking that this does not punish illegal behavior enough. But it, I think represented a reasonable compromise between the two sides and would provide, both opportunities for treatment and penalties for people that don't want to get treatment. Then the bill came to the House. The House took a much different approach, a much less collaborative and bipartisan approach. The House passed a bill on a party line vote that I believe only made it a misdemeanor, put a lot of emphasis on treatment, but not a lot of emphasis on criminal penalties for illegal behavior or incentivizing that treatment. The bill then went to what we call a conference committee. So, it works just like the old Schoolhouse Rocks video. Mr. Bill has to go through both the House and the Senate, and he has to go through both chambers in the exact same way. And if if one version is off by even a word or probably even a comma, one or the other chamber has to acquiesce and pass the same version as the other chamber. And if they can't agree as to which chamber's version gets passed, it goes to a conference committee. The rules then say this conference committee that has 3 members from each chamber, 2 Democrats from each chamber and a Republican, they then propose what's called a conference report, which is basically an amendment to the bill that strikes everything and replaces it with this new version. The rules then say that version cannot be amended, that each chamber must then have an up or down vote on that conference report. No changes. So the conference report came to the House, and it did not get a single Republican vote. We felt that while the bill would have made possession a gross misdemeanor, the way it would have allowed or not allowed that crime to actually be charged, it was kind of illusory to say it was a gross misdemeanor. Prosecutors on the ground would never actually be able to bring a case against people that deserved it. And the pathways for treatment, I think, were well-intentioned, but probably we didn't think would be executed very well. Would involve things like housing 2 people together, one of whom was not yet agreeing to get treatment, and the other of whom, was in week 4 of their recovery. And, anybody who knows anything about this would say that you don't actually want those 2 people to be in the room together, in their recovery journeys at that point in time. So Republicans were not willing to vote for that bill that probably would have made the problem worse. And here's the key component: that version of the bill would have preempted cities and counties from passing their own ordinances. So in the absence of any state law, while that's maybe not a good thing, a city like Sumner or Puyallup could say, well, there's no state law criminalizing drug possession, but we don't want it in our community, so we're going to make it a misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor, or even felony. But if a state law passed that preempted cities and counties from doing that, they couldn't do so. So we viewed that as sort of the worst outcome possible, simultaneously not fixing the problem at the state level, but also telling cities and counties they couldn't do anything else to fix the problem at their own local level. But also there were not enough Democrats voted for the bill. So the conference report failed. It got 43 votes. It needed 50. This is my 9th session now. I have not seen in 9 sessions a single bill come to the floor that didn't get 50 votes. In fact, I've probably only seen about 2 or 3 that only got 50 votes. Most get 51 or much higher. So the session ended after 105 days with no bill, which means if nothing else happens, there will not be criminal penalties on a state level for drug possession starting on June 30th or July 1. The governor announced yesterday an intent to call us back into special session. That was a little bit news to me. Got very angry for a minute and thought that once again, the majority caucuses cut a deal with each other that did not involve Republican input, which I didn't think would be good for the state or the 4 million people that we all represent. Turns out, after talking with the governor's office and the lead Senate negotiator on this bill, the Speaker of the House, the Senate Minority Leader, there is no deal. The governor is just very exuberant. The theory is he just announced he's not running for re-election. He does not want to be the governor that let drugs become legal on his watch. This is not an issue he was involved in at all during the 105 days. His staff went home. They were home on Sunday night when all of these votes were going down. They were not engaged on this issue. And so it seems that this is just a last minute effort for him to get involved, get some attention, get some credit for there being a deal. So he thinks if he announces the date for a special session, it will incentivize legislators to, be more proactive, talking with each other to find out, how we can make a deal. Handily, I don't think that's necessary. I think it probably only hurts things. We were already talking a lot. I mean, it doesn't really feel like session has ended for me. I think this only sows distrust. But, he doesn't get to vote on it. He will sign pretty much anything we give him, I think. And so having talked with all the legislative leaders, I'm a lot more encouraged than I was when I saw the tweets about special session, that there is no deal, but everybody wants to find a deal that gets broad bipartisan consensus. And I think that will be really good because it makes sure that folks like me and Chris, who represent communities like Puyallup and Sumner, have a voice in that process. And it's not just written by, folks that only represent places like Seattle and downtown Spokane. So that's that. Chris, jump back in if I miss anything. Otherwise, would love to answer any questions about this or any other topic.
Yeah, no, I think that you did a great job. Cindy's got her hand up quick.
Yeah, thanks. So locally, we are so lucky in Washington State to have Drew being our minority leader in the House. I appreciate him, and we appreciate him in the House. He's had his nose in a budget for, however long he's been doing this. I've only been here. This is my third year, my first complete session in person. And so I just thrilled to have Drew at the helm, and they did a great job updating. As far as the capital budget, one thing that I'm particularly excited about for this area is we're going to do some renovations to Thun Field to make our emergency preparedness be a little shored up there and see what we can do up there. And we did have some good things for City of Puyallup and some good things as far as philanthropy type of things. So that was good. Transportation, the big deal is, as we said, the Gateway project is going to be off of delay in the transportation budget. So we're thrilled about that. And we need to have our route to the port. And the cities have skin in the game on this. And so it's a little bit disingenuous to say, oh, let's just postpone it. So I was thrilled about that. Just what they said about the budget, $70 billion, 1,500 new programs just spread about like peanut butter. Thrilled to be this time on the finance committee. I hate taxes more than anyone, so it was nice to be on the finance committee. We did fight against that REIT tax, and it didn't come up. I hope we can still fight against it next time. And the raising the limit from 1% to 3% also didn't go through. So it was good to have a front row seat to that on the finance committee and see those things die. So yeah, that's about all I have to add. Thank you.
And before we go to Q&A, there's a couple of other bills just to highlight, some bills that did pass and some that didn't pass, just to give you a little flavor of some of the other things that happened in the legislature. So there was a bill to ban the connection of natural gas to new construction homes. That was obviously a concern. That bill did not pass. Interesting bill. There was a bill to abolish advisory votes. Whenever the legislature passes a new tax and then you get your ballot the next year, it says the legislature passed this tax. Do you like it or not? So that bill did pass. So you will no longer have that opportunity to provide feedback to your legislators. I think that that's probably unfortunate because, I think you really need that opportunity to give that direct feedback. There was another bill that did not pass that would have made voting mandatory. I thought that was interesting, just a very odd thing to be proposing. There was funding in the budget to do a study for the removal of the Snake River Dam, which is very interesting because, thinking forward, if we tear down those dams and lose all that hydroelectric power that they create, that good, clean energy, and at the same time, we're really pushing to electrify all of our vehicles and increase demand for electricity, I don't know that you can do both of those simultaneously. And then finally, there was a bill that now, congratulations, Washington, we have our very own state dinosaur. There was a bill that made the Stegosaurus Rex the state dinosaur. So I think we can all be very proud about that.
Oh, that's real, huh?
That's real.
A big success.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I was just pulling up the School of Rock, It's Only a Bill, little video for 3 minutes. And I should start off our, every January showing this GAC group that just to get as a reminder of the process. And so good. What about the ergonomics bill? I'm trying to think of some stuff our coalition was kind of on quite a bit. Do you know where that landed?
So
that it passed.
Yeah, that bill did pass. I think I'm assuming that both me, Chris, and Cindy all voted no. That was kind of disappointing. That was a bill that we were able to kind of beat back last year. I don't know if this is quite enough to say it's a silver lining, but my understanding is the bill that finally did pass this year is not as big of a challenge for employers as the version that we kind of beat back last year. And so the opposition in Olympia was probably not quite as intense for that reason either. I think some of the businesses, maybe some of the larger ones felt that it was something that they could deal with, that wasn't going to put them out of business. But yeah, that did end up passing.
Great. Well, anyone on the call today, certainly chime in if you have questions. Raise your hand or just chime in. It's fine. Go right ahead, Sean.
Thanks. Less of a question, more of just a huge note of appreciation to the delegation for both the 21st and the 31st Legislative District, as well as the rest of the Pierce County delegation for just making sure that the legislature keeps its promises and finishes what we started in terms of the Puget Sound Gateway. What's worth noting is not only did they get the project back on track, but they also were able to find an additional $265 million to plug a shortfall that had developed within the project. When Connecting Washington was passed, that took some brave votes by a number of lawmakers, and making sure that you follow through and deliver is just help supports lawmakers' credibility. Thank you for what you do on that.
Great. Anyone else have any questions? All right. Well, that was a thorough summary. Oh, go ahead, Cindy.
Yeah, I just have a further comment as long as we have a second. Coming there in person, and I was there 8 days in my first 2 years in office. Coming there in person, I almost feel like I'm starting now. I just started this session. It was just a whole different experience, and we really never need to do that again. You have to have access to your lawmakers, and you have to be able to collaborate with people as much as we even were able to do. And I think that it's just important for the public to be in on everything and for us to be down there. So it was a night and day experience. You almost come out of 2 years of Zoom and think, now tell me again why I'm doing this job. But I was glad that I was able to go back down there. So that was good.
Great. There was also, I can't remember where it landed on an employee can sue you over employee records kind of issue. Had a lot of issues, problems. Is that, I think anticipated to be killed in Ways and Means, but not sure if anyone knows where that landed.
Trying to think back. There's so many. I'll see if I can find it.
I know. And it's okay. I can certainly look it up. I feel like
I know which bill you're talking about, Tara, but I cannot remember the number, can't remember the prime sponsor. So I'm trying to think of how I can look it up.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I'll dig. We were hot and heavy chasing it, and then alas, I went on vacation. County Councilman Morell has a question.
I think it's more of a comment than a question. Thank you for the opportunity to address our legislators. I really appreciate those in the 2nd, 25th, and the 31st for making sure that Pierce County is represented as far as the rural suburban communities go. I represent an area that takes in both the 2nd, the 25th, and the 31st. So, and I am elated that Representative Stokesbary is going to take up the hammer and hopefully be able to at least make some forward effort down in Olympia to some more bipartisan legislation down there. I appreciate the work on 410 and 162. As I think Representative Stokesbary said, Tahali is nearing the finish line to put that road in on the backside of Tahali that'll go down to 128th. That'll be a major infrastructure that Tahali is paying for to the tune of about $30 million. That should be, and I look forward in the next 2 months to have that deal, and they might even have a ribbon cutting coming up to get that road started. So the 162, any improvements, the interchange of 410, the roundabouts will be much needed improvement. That 162 in the morning and in the evening is just like trying to come up Shaw Road in 122nd. It snakes for 6-7 miles. So thank you for your help on that. As Representative Jacobson said, the first ever funding for an airport in Pierce County happened. And I really appreciate Representative Jacobson for leading the charge on this. Nicole Weber, one of the community members, suggested it after a conversation when they were doing the Sumner grade fires. All the air support had to sleep on cots on the tarmac because we did not have any vacant structures on Thun Field that they could operate out of. So this $1 million gives us the ability to renovate a building and put emergency service capacity in that building, which is a good thing. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for all the projects that were passed, both capital and transportation for Pierce County. And we will be meeting tomorrow with all of our towns and cities to talk about a Blake fix. And Prosecutor Mary Robnett and Executive Bruce Danmeyer will be leading that conversation. The county will move forward with a fix. It just depends on whether it takes in both use of drugs and possession. So most of the areas, I think Sumner has passed a gross misdemeanor use bill, and I think Bonnie Lake has. So we'll just see how all the other towns want to pursue this so we just don't end up with a patchwork of jurisdictions, and then who has jurisdictions over who. If the county sheriff gets arrests someone in Lakewood, do they get a stack charges because Lakewood has a stronger possession law than Pierce County? So we're trying to navigate all this, but hopefully after tomorrow we'll have more information and try to move forward with something. But it would have been a better deal if the state obviously had come to an agreement on something that would allow us to just say, okay, this is what we have to do. But we'll make do. We'll continue to pursue public safety in Pierce County. So thank you for everyone's help down there. And thank you for everyone lobbying for sensible bills. And we'll see what happens in the near future. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Ryan.
Thank you, Tara, and thank you to our state legislators as well. It's just a note of appreciation here from Sumner. Anything you can do to help alleviate some of the cut-through traffic issues and the backups on 162, the funding there, much appreciated, as well as our library project. That is fantastic as we're moving to vote on a bond, a levy situation there in August. That's much appreciated. And as well as the vehicular pursuit bill that did pass, as Representative Stokesbary said, we go 3 yards, we need to go 50, but our police chief, I can tell you at one point during the session, he was pretty dismayed that nothing was going to get changed. And he was glad to see that something got changed because it so ties the hands of our police officers in doing what they feel like is the right thing to do. So thank you for that. And the House bill the middle housing bill that passed, I was watching that closely, trying to put some meaningful lobbying input into that. What resulted, I think, is a pretty good middle ground. I think it still has some ways to go on that, but we will implement it as required. So thank you very much. I appreciate all your hard work and efforts for our area and our community.
And Ryan, I'm sure that we'll be glad to run legislation next year to try and address concerns that cities may have in implementing that middle housing bill.
Meredith?
Well, I was just in case we have city updates, but yeah, I just wanted to echo a huge thank you to our amazing 25th legislative team. I think that you guys did a fantastic job this year. Yeah, there were a number of things like the middle housing bill, the transit-oriented development bill that we were tracking very closely because they really do, change the potential for local control of what our city looks like and what housing in our city looks like. So I think there were, some good, meaningful changes on those. And a big thank you for the $700,000 in the capital budget for our downtown stormwater upgrades. I know stormwater does not sound like a very sexy project, and it does not sound like an economic development related project. But in this case, it's money to allow for direct discharge for all of our downtown redevelopment efforts. And so it really does have a huge direct impact on allowing development feasibility of our downtown sites and allowing property owners to be able to fully build out their site and not have to do on-site stormwater retention. So it's a pretty big thing for us, and I very much appreciate it. And a lot of, great money going into partners of ours, like the Step-by-Step Early Learning Center. Childcare is a huge and critical need for our workforce development ecosystem. So that's, I think, much appreciated. The Meeker Mansion Cultural Heritage Center, some money to keep on moving that forward in our downtown core. So just a lot of really great projects. Thank you so much. And then thank you for everything else. I know that, as Ryan said, our police chief was watching all of this, and I think is, very grateful for all of the efforts to try to help address some of the issues there.
Amen. Well, without anyone else having any other questions right now, Meredith, do you mind if we go ahead, and if you have some city updates, we'll kind of go to you and Ryan and back to Dave.
Sure.
He has any.
So I'll keep it pretty brief. Let's see. So our Meeker Festival Street, which is the 2-block section directly in front of Meeker Mansion, from Meridian to the 3rd Street bypass, the city just hired a consultant, and we'll be kicking that off with a goal of having a conceptual design completed by the end of this year. So a number of you will be hearing more about that, and I'm sure we'll be part of our stakeholder team really in discussing what sort of infrastructure needs to be put in place so that you guys can close it down for special events, things like really cool lighting so you can keep events going into the evening hours, electricity so that food trucks and other vendors don't need to run their generators, things like that. And so the design is really a goal of having a place where you can easily, quickly shut down that 2-block section and have, community events that bring some more energy to our downtown core. And then our food truck pilot program. In 2019, the city started a food truck pilot program. It was not very popular the first year, but the pandemic rolled around and a lot of people were looking for ways to do business in new ways. And we expanded it that they could vend anywhere in our city. 3 years later, council decided to go ahead and make that a permanent program. So this evening, they're going to be reviewing some of the suggestions, and we'll be rolling out our permanent program in about a month. And I'm pretty excited about that because it really allows food trucks to operate pretty much anywhere in the city. It gives them a lot of flexibility. What we discovered is that, food trucks are a great part of our local ecosystem. They bring more energy to our local businesses and they're great partners. So, and they're very good about self-regulating and not parking in places where people might be angry at them. So as much as we can give them the flexibility and not legislate things for them. And I think with that, I'll end it. We have lots of other fun stuff going on, but I can give you more updates later.
Great. We always have a great way of breaking things down. And I know you're definitely boots on the ground, speaking to these businesses, really listening to what's important to your stakeholders, and another person we're so grateful for. Absolutely. All right, Ryan, how about some updates from Sumner?
Absolutely. Though things don't seem to be slowing down in Sumner, especially in the construction aspect, our downtown still looks like one giant construction site. We have met with our downtown businesses to kind of help them understand what the timing looks like and the scheduling for construction. And I can honestly tell you, they want it to be done as soon as absolutely possible. They are being impacted dramatically by the closures. We're doing our best to, have the signage up that says businesses are open. But again, when you kind of look from a distance and all you see are orange cones and big yellow pieces of equipment, you maybe not want to go downtown, but they are open. So hopefully you can remember that and tell your folks and constituents that Sumner is open for business. Just a little bit of a parking challenge, but we are open. So trying to endure that, hoping to see the main project that we're working on right now, the Woonerf and intersection of Kincaid and Main Street, completed by the first part of June. So we have about another month to go of agony, and that will be done. But we also have Wood and Main intersection firing up, and that will result in that intersection being restricted and then closed for 1 month while they do the paving. So all of that is having definitely some challenges and impacts to our businesses. On the positive side, 9 of our businesses received disaster grant funding from the state. About $600,000 in disaster grant funding is going to help them in their recovery from the fire that we had in October. So that was super positive and fortunate for that to be happening. We also are continuing work kind of on the comprehensive plan side. Our 2024 comp plan kickoff has started. We're also updating our Parks and Trail comprehensive plan. And then in a more finer grain note, we are finishing our work on the Heritage Park and alley activation design. The company Jet, who we've been working with, have done some fantastic renderings. The renderings you can do these days compared to what you could do when I started in this profession is amazing, and true to the sense of the word amazing. You feel like you're walking right into the site, and they have some really cool plans that bring that to life. Of course, it's a plan, and over the time we'll have to come up with money for actual construction. I attended a CTE and EDB meet and greet last week. So the Economic Development Board, Tamsin at the Economic Development Board put this together with the CTE programs at the high schools. And it was great to meet with those directors and try to make some connections there between our businesses and the schools so that the employers and the educators can help get students the training they need and help place them in jobs. So that was a really good, I thought it was a good event for networking and making those connections. A couple other things. Speaking of the Sumner High School, phase 1, big, beautiful, brand new building, phase 1 is now open. The students started attending class there yesterday. So that's a fantastic new addition to our downtown. I got to tour that on Friday, and I can tell you the view from the 3rd floor is fantastic. The mountain was out. It was a place that I would like to hang out as a student, but I'm not a student, so I won't be hanging out there, but it's super cool. Finally, we are doing some events downtown in May. The May block party will be on May 20th, and that'll be with food trucks, music, beer garden, again, trying to promote business in our downtown and bring people back to our downtown. And then final thing is the Oxbow Urban Kitchen. It opened, and my understanding is they have a waiting list in order to get in there. I'm not sure how long it takes to get in there for dinner, but it seems like they're hitting out of the park right now. So that's another positive. Happy to answer any questions. Oh, wait a minute. One more thing. You may have seen some things in the news about safe car parking in downtown Sumner, working with Faith Covenant Church on an idea that they presented to us last year. And I say that because it's taken us some time to get it kind of to the top of what we need to be addressing and talking about. So this is still just a conversation. We talked to our council, kind of gave them some background on safe car parking and what the request is and how the city could work with them on a memorandum of understanding or memorandum of agreement. And now we're going to go back, meet with the church and kind of line out, what this would entail and kind of what their responsibilities are as well, and see if they still want to move forward with it. So it's a conversation. I can tell you our council's approaching it cautiously. At the most, they would, I believe, grant a 6-month pilot project to see how this would work. And so that's also working its way through the process. And I'll give you an update next month.
Great. Well, we've got 2 great chamber events coming up in Sumner. Our Wake Up, I'm excited, next Thursday, 9 to 10 is at Main Street Tattoo.
Oh,
what a fun wake up. I think that'll be great. Always love to see any of our representatives poke their head in. We always give you a shout out, and you'll just love the vibe of 50 to 75 people who literally show up every single Thursday. It's just a great way to kind of get energized. And then we will be at Oxbow Urban Kitchen for our Wind Down Wednesday, which is May 23rd. So that's live music that the chamber pays for, and just, again, provides businesses an opportunity for us to bring about 75 people in to hear a little live music and pay their, I guess, respects, if you will, patronage to the restaurants and bars of Puyallup and Sumner. So that's been the 4th Wednesday of the month, and just really great to support the musicians, support the restaurants, and I guess create a little bit of buzz that Puyallup and Sumner have got it going on a Wednesday night live music venue. So good all around. Port of Tacoma, Sean Eagan, do we have some updates? We're excited you're going to be part of our economic forecast luncheon coming up.
Yeah, thanks. Just 2 quick items. First of all, this upcoming Thursday at the Port Commission meeting, the Commission will be approving this year's investments through its local economic development investment fund. I will have more details at next month's meeting, but I think there are a number of projects of interest for East Pierce County that will be on the list. So a sneak preview of some coming attractions. Second thing is I wanted to, again, express appreciation to our state's legislative delegation. One thing that did not get mentioned before was that the capital budget includes $8 million to fund the Maritime 253 Skills Center. This will be a new skills center that will be built here in Pierce County, focusing on the maritime trades. And while the Tacoma Public Schools is the host of this, it is a skills center that will be available for all students in Pierce County. Doesn't matter if you're coming from Puyallup or Sumner or Franklin Pierce School District, you're all able to have an opportunity to be able to participate in this program. The Port of Tacoma and Tacoma Public Schools, as I may have mentioned, I think last month, has signed an interlocal agreement in which the port has agreed to host the facility on our property. We have a tentative site in mind, and it is a site that would be on the Theophos waterway. There are some important cultural sensitivities to that site with the Puyallup tribe. They are cultural sensitivities that we think we can work around and still make sure that we're able to develop it, as well as honoring the Puyallup tribe. We had a really positive consultation meeting with the tribe last week to talk about this. And we have a plan moving forward to do probably one of the most extensive investigations of the site from a cultural standpoint that I have ever seen on any site, because we want to make sure that when we develop this, we develop it in such a way that we're able to achieve our goals of making sure to be able to house the skill center, but doing it in a way that does not have an adverse impact on any cultural relics or anything in that regard. And it was a constructive conversation with the tribe. This is at the very, very beginning of a long, long journey. Lots of ways for us to screw things up, but we're going to do everything we can to make sure that that does not occur. And we're really, really excited about the partnership with Tacoma Public Schools. And again, to be able to create an opportunity, not just for students in Tacoma, but for students throughout all of Pierce County. And I will go ahead and leave it at that.
Awesome. Well, I mentioned the economic forecast luncheon too, and I kind of confused some dates. So I put it in the chat. Our annual chamber meeting is considered the economic forecast luncheon. As always, we will have Pierce County Executive Dan Meyer there, Port of Tacoma. We'll also have a financial forecaster from Investment Portfolio Services. New this year, however, is someone that I've been wanting to have for quite some time. It's Dr. Ali Modaris from UW Tacoma. He's the Assistant Chancellor of Community Partnerships, also Dean of the School of Urban Studies, so heavy into economic trends research. He'll be speaking on the future of remote work, office space needs post-pandemic, rebuilding and reimagining your workforce. He's excited to tease up the AI topic a little bit, a little hot topic. And then also just addressing some of the labor shortages with some good data on job posting data. So really excited about that lineup this year. And if you haven't done so already, get your tickets. I'm sure we've got a lot of board directors out there trying to fill tables too. So that's another way to get in if you know a board director. So let's see, Dave Morell, County Councilman Morell. I know you had commentary earlier, but specific to county, is there anything else you wanted to add?
I just want to make sure that all the businesses out there understand that we opened up the innovation grant program for small business. That means you could have up to a $40,000 match on any capital improvements that you have to your facility. We have had several hundred farmers actually buy new equipment for their farms through this innovation grant, and this is using the last of our American Rescue Plan dollars. So we opened it up to small cities. Our 8,000 incorporated city, you can qualify for these match grants. So we have a lot of small businesses in Eatonville, that are get a chance to apply for these grants. So that is opened up through our economic development department. District 1, which is my district, will be having their in-district meeting tomorrow night at White River High School at 6 o'clock. This is a unique opportunity that the council members get out and we get to do presentations. This one is on civics, and the high school students have written their own proclamation that we will read, which might be interesting. And so this will be an interesting meeting again, 6 o'clock tomorrow night. If you haven't heard, Pierce County passed a affordable housing tax, 0.1%, which will go into effect, I do believe, in July of this year. The first project that qualified for that is a development called Copper Ridge, 275 unit, mainly made up of 3-bedroom units, which is unique for unincorporated Pierce County. And they will be finishing up the purchase of the property and hopefully get started by the year's end. But this will be a project that we're looking forward to for workforce housing. You don't get too many 3-unit affordable housing units built anywhere, much less in unincorporated Pierce County. So looking forward to that, and a lot of things on the docket ahead of us, and just appreciate everyone's involvement, engagement, and keeping an eye on us to make sure we're moving the ball forward. So thank you, Tara.
Oh, thank you. Well, again, thank you so much to our representatives and the 25th and the 31st, obviously, lots of gratitude coming your way. I wanted to ask real quick or clarify, we typically do like to do a wrap up of the session, and wanted to ask if any of your pages have been updated with a type of summary, if you will, Senator Gildon, Jacobson, Stokesbary. Can we link to your sites for some wrap up information? Or have you been too busy?
I mean, I sent out a newsletter, and I think that's at the top of my site. I'll try to text you a link today.
Perfect.
And I've got, I just sent out my session update yesterday, and it's on my webpage as well.
I know plenty has been written. I don't know what's been written in a publicly accessible format. So I will ask what we have, and I'll let you know, Tara.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, hey, let's get on with our Tuesday. Thank you all so much. This was a really special GAC. We will see you next month. Thank you.